Greetings again everyone, it's always fun for me when something a bit different wings its way into my lens testing laboratory, and before you see probably the coolest lens that I have tested this year, the Thypoch Eureka 15mm f2. Released earlier this year, it's a totally manual lens which is available on Leica M mount, although it's very easily adapted onto Sony E mount and other mirrorless camera systems. I'd like to thank Thypoch for sending me one of these lenses for testing, although as usual this will be a totally independent review. They've had no input into it whatsoever. The lens's neat collapsible design is inspired by the original collapsible 50mm lenses that started to hit the market all the way back in 1925 at the advent of 35mm film photography itself. Not only does the design therefore look incredibly neat and unique, it also saves space in your kit bag, and without an adapter on the back, the lens is indeed very tiny. It's available in a light version made of aluminium alloy at 120 grams, which is the lens you see here, which costs $580 US, or you could get the classic brass version weighing 218 grams at $860 US. I wish I could have seen that one. Brass lenses and filters feel absolutely amazing to me, even if they're expensive. Both lenses feature rugged build quality, with Thypoch claiming that they've been tested from -30 degrees up to 70 degrees centigrade. Ceci n'est pas un objectif. Somebody had fun designing this thing. And designing its lovely outer packaging too, seemingly, as it comes in a lovely presentation box with customized UV filter, not multi-coated though, seemingly, metallic hood and image booklet for inspiration. Nice. The last time I saw anything like that was with a lomography Petzval lens, I think, absolutely years ago now. Despite the lens's tiny size, it apparently can cover a digital medium format image circle, 33 by 44mm sensor, if you have the right adapter, of course. I didn't get a chance to test that, unfortunately, although I was testing a Fuji medium format camera at the time, but I imagine its vignetting will be pretty heavy on medium format. It certainly showed some vignetting on full frame. Still, its bright aperture 50mm images stand out nicely from a full frame camera. As you can see, they're looking pretty nice here, offering good background separation and some very pleasant bokeh. More on image quality in a minute. I adapted this lens onto Sony E mount for the purposes of this review. As you can see, an adapter obviously makes this tiny lens a little bit bigger. Turn the top part of the lens all the way clockwise, then pull it out to extend, before turning the top part anti-clockwise again to put it properly into position. It won't lock into that position though, so if you turn the little aperture ring all the way, then it'll be ready to collapse again, so try not to do that. The lens's focus ring turns very smoothly and precisely, and it has a mechanism to lock it to the infinity setting. Useful if you're shooting at infinity all day, but annoying if not though, and I found that part of the lens a little bit fiddly. It kept slipping into locking into infinity. For anyone interested to know, the lens does suffer from moderate focus breathing, as you can see here. I can't imagine many video makers using this lens for professional work, to be honest though. I don't think that's what this thing is really intended for. The lens comes with a little metal hood which is nicely designed in sympathy with the rest of the body. The lens does not have a filter thread to it, although it does come with this custom UV filter which tightens around the edge of the front element more for protection than anything else. The filter does not appear to be multi-coated though, and it doesn't have its own filter thread on the edge for attaching other filters, which is a bit of a missed opportunity. Other than that, this is obviously a seriously unique lens, by today's standards anyway, with lots of neat little design touches. The only thing I disliked about its design was the focus ring locking at infinity. Kind of a pain, but apart from that, it's a simple lens in use for anybody happy enough to focus manually. Alright then, image quality. Let's start by adapting it onto my full frame camera, a Sony a7R III, with its 42 megapixel sensor. No in-camera corrections are available with this lens. At f2 in the middle, we see very good, although not perfect, sharpness. Contrast is just good, and we also see just a tiny touch of purple fringing around contrasting edges, but not much. Around the middle of the frame, sharpness drops off a little, but if I look over into the corners, resolution is actually kind of good there, although contrast is low and the image is quite dark. Stop down to f2.8 for more brightness and contrast in those corners. The mid-frame is now looking sharp too, and the middle of the image sees excellent contrast at f2.8, although sharpness still isn't quite perfect. However, stop down to f4 and we are treated to razor sharpness in the middle now. Nice. The corners are now seeing great contrast, although we are also catching a touch of softness now, oddly enough. f5.6 looks about the same, but f8 and f11 are a touch sharper, looking very good now. Overall, on a full-frame camera, the lens offers a slightly wobbly performance here, but generally speaking, its sharpness is very good, and indeed excellent when stopped down a little, with good contrast. In case you are wondering, here's the lens's MTF chart, which helps to validate my findings of the lens's uneven performance. While I do wish the quality at f2 was just a little stronger, considering the lens's quite simple design of only 6 glass elements, it's not too much of a bad show overall. Alright, well, let's test the lens on a 24 megapixel APS-C camera now, with its smaller, denser sensor. At f2, the lens is noticeably soft in the middle, with more apparent purple fringing. Corner image quality is low on contrast, but actually still sees some sharpness here. Stop down to f2.8 and contrast increases, but the image looks a little softer, which is unusual. Back in the middle, we see better contrast and slightly better sharpness. However, stop down to f4 for image quality to become superb in the middle. Strangely though, corner image quality looks worse. There's obviously something quite bizarre going on here, but honestly, I had everything set up correctly for this. However, stop down to f5.6 and those corners look better, and at f8 and f11, they finally look quite sharp again. Wow, if the lens's sharpness was a bit wobbly on a full-frame camera, then on APS-C it's about as stable as the economy of North Korea. Expect some unusual results if shooting on a cropped sensor camera. The lens really is primarily designed for full-frame. Anyway, let's move back to full frame and take a look at distortion and vignetting. The good news is that the lens projects almost no distortion here. The bad news, strong vignetting at f2, and I dread to think what that would look like on a medium format camera. Well, stop down to f2.8 or f4 to see those corners brighten up real nice. The lens's minimum focus distance is a rather long 90 centimeters, which is a real shame. I wish it could focus much closer than this. At f2, close-up image quality is still quite sharp in the middle, though. It's about the same at f2.8, but at f4 we see excellent sharpness when shooting close up. Now let's see how the lens works against bright lights. It's an average performance here. To be honest, I was expecting worse. Some flaring and glaring is visible, but it's nowhere near as bad as some cheaper manual focus lenses that I've tested in the past. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sun stars. At f2, a moderate amount of coma smearing is visible on bright points of light in the image corners. That's reduced at f2.8, and at f4, it's finally gone. If we move the camera a bit, we notice that it's at f4 that we also see some strong sun stars already emerging. Nice. At f5.6 they're impressive, at f8 huge, at f11 something else, and at f16 frankly jaw-dropping. Wow. Next, bokeh. I think that's a strong point of this lens, as the outer focus backgrounds have loads of character to them. Specular highlights have just an edge of hardness, which makes them really pop out, and even the cat's eye shaped bokeh balls in the image corners somehow manage to add something, drawing you into your subject in the middle a little more. Really interesting bokeh, a real highlight of the lens here. Related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. From these pictures at f2, f2.8 and f4, we see that it's not a problem at all here. Overall, well, this is one of the most interesting lenses I have tested in years. I really liked its classic and unique build quality and tiny size, even if the focus ring annoyingly gets stuck at infinity. The resolution characteristic of this lens is slightly crazy. I wouldn't use it on an APS-C camera, but on full frame it's mostly sharp, except for one or two weak spots which fluctuate depending on your aperture setting. I wish it could focus much more closely to your subject too, but it displays low distortion and very good work in dark conditions, and as you can tell, I absolutely loved its bokeh. It's a pricey lens for what it is, that's for sure, but then again, there's nothing else quite like it available today, and its images really are particularly lovely, so if you have some spare cash and you're really in the mood for something different, then I can actually recommend this one. Thanks for watching everyone, I hope you find these reviews helpful. I love doing all this testing to discover what these lenses can really do. It takes a lot of time and work though, so if you'd like to support this channel, check out my Patreon page down in the description below, where supporters get all kinds of exclusive bonus content. Ciao for now everyone.